episódio do Remote Work Podcast. O Job é o seu podcast e será o moderador, e tem como convidado o Marcelo, que é o novo CTO da Remote.com, e ele está a entrar nesta jornada com o Job. So let's start the Remote Work Podcast live episode. So the moderator is Job. It's his own podcast, and with him he has Marcelo Lebre, which is his new CTO on the Remote.com company. I hope you enjoy.
All right, thank you, Nelson. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Remote Podcast. So I'm sure not many of you have heard it so far. It's only 4 episodes, and most of them were released in the beginning of last year. We've recorded a number of other ones, but in the meantime, a bunch of stuff happened. So I'll tell the whole story from the beginning, why I'm here and what is exactly happening, and then we'll get into whatever we find interesting. So a year ago, I was here, I was invited, and at the time I was working as the VP of product at GitLab. And how many of you know what GitLab is? Yeah, most of you. I saw even a sticker on a laptop, this is very good. So I was working at GitLab, and I've been working there for about 5 years. And GitLab is a remote-only company. So every single person at GitLab works from home, from a co-working space, or anywhere else. And to me, that's incredibly inspiring, right? Like I lived that myself. I reaped the benefits. I live in a beautiful house here in Braga, and I get to work from home. You know, I don't have a commute and many other advantages that come with that. So I thought to myself, you know, I've been with GitLab for a long time. How can I make the world work remote? How can I help everybody else work remote without hiring everyone for GitLab? So the first thing I did, I thought, well, I should be able to talk about it. So I started the podcast, and here we are. And the second thing I did was I thought, well, maybe I can make an even bigger impact. So I did what, you know, anyone else with some programming skills does. I went on the internet. I was like, well, what would I call this? Remote.com. I went to the website. There was a website there, which is not mine. At least at the time it wasn't. And I contacted the owner and I said, this is cool, but I think you can do better. Actually, I think I can do better than what you have here today. And that's where we are now. So about 2 weeks ago, I officially started as the new CEO at Remote.com. It's now my company. And the first person I hired was my best friend, Marcelo. So without further ado, what I want to do today is I want to discuss a little bit about how we came where we are. I'm going to talk with Marcelo, why the hell does he join me on this journey? And then maybe we'll get into things that you find interesting. So if you have any questions, I think there's a mic going around the audience. Feel free to raise your hand, even anywhere in the middle. Like, we're fine with it. I love it if you have a question or you want to set the conversation in a particular direction. So without further ado, Marcelo, maybe you can tell a little bit about yourself and like, why the hell would you join me on this crazy trip?
Sure. Hi guys. So I'm Marcelo. I'm tell you a bit about my past. So I'm from Aveiro, studied at the University of Aveiro. My first job was as a researcher, working in IoT and sensor networks. Then got a bit tired of tiny Aveiro and moved to Lisbon. Worked for a big-ass company called Novabas. Then I moved again. I worked as a QA engineer for a couple of years. Eventually got closer to startup world and all the crazy ideas and building stuff from scratch, creating teams, helping teams scale. Eventually I was a CTO a couple times, helped companies to grow. Once I was a part of a VC, basically would invest in startups, and I would help them to build whatever they were building. And for the later part of the last 2 years, I was a VP of engineering at a company called Unbabel, with our headquarters in Lisbon. My team was leading the whole engineering team, around 50 to 60 engineers. We scaled. I joined when we were like, I was the 8th engineer. And when I left to join this good sir, we're like 50 something, still growing. And so one of the things that I always found, so I'm a I'm crazy for optimization, and I really hate waste. And one of the things, we were always discussing our crazy ideas and the things we would love to build together. Mostly the ideas, never satellite. But the ones that, we would do it from our homes. Job at the time was living in the Netherlands most of the time, and I was in Portugal. We would work really well together. Sometimes in different times of the day. We wouldn't even speak directly, but we would just work amazingly through our code, our projects, and stuff. And one of the things that got me crazy excited about this is, as I said, I ran a team of 50 engineers-ish. And you can see what an office does for people, right? It's good in some certain cases for some people, but at the end of the day, I would spend at least 30 minutes in each direction for commute. Like being in a metro in Lisbon, people smell, they make noises, they smell, and they make noises. Right? And this is 30 minutes of your life in the morning and 30 minutes at the end of the day, at least. I had some colleagues that would spend 45 minutes, an hour, sometimes more in commute. And people, when you get to the office, they're already complaining about life. They work for like 8, 10 hours, maybe less. Then they'll go home, they're stressed, they're tired, they're in the metro, people smell, make noises. And this is a lot of waste. Imagine like an hour a day, at the end of the year, you can actually take a really, really long vacation. Or do whatever else that makes you feel great. And of course, I always followed up very close what Job was doing. We would speak daily, and always very keen to, I would get off work, get in the metro, complain about people smelling, and he's like, yeah, I'm in my pajamas coding. Like, that's, think about having your day with an extra hour every single day. Think about being close to the people you love or your friends and stuff. And that got deeper and deeper into my thought process. And every time I would think about going to work or doing something, and then this opportunity came along, and it just made total sense. And here we are.
Yeah, I think about waste, there's this interesting thing where you think it's like, oh, my commute is like to university, it's like 15 minutes. But you forget that it's not just 15 minutes, right? You have to compare it with the entirety of just sitting at home and opening your laptop and that's it. It's, you get up, you have to make sure you do everything you could possibly do at home, that you finish that. You have to get dressed. You have to then leave the door, and now you're 15 minutes on your way, and then you arrive at the university, you arrive at work, and you still have to walk through a number of steps, right? Like you still have to get, especially if you're in an office, and not to say there's anything against socializing, but it will take you a while the moment you enter the door to actually sitting at your desk and doing stuff. And that's exactly where you see such an immense amount of waste. And in my experience, I always give this example because it feels so close to home for many people, is that, if you want to go do grocery shopping at the Pingo Doce, you do it at the same time with everybody else. If you work in an office or if you have like normal hours, you go at night when everybody's there, or you go in the weekend when it's hell and literally everybody is there. So, if you have the flexibility to work from wherever you want, in the middle of the day, you could say, well, I'll do groceries now, and I work at night, and I don't have to be in a Pingo Doce when there's 400,000 people there.
That smell and make noises.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. Now we are here. We have a lot of things to do. How many of you are engineers, like software engineers, are programming? You want to hear a little bit about the technical challenges, or you want to skip over that? I want to get a feeling of how deep we should go. Someone say something.
Now it's just awkward. Come on.
Yeah.
I think I would like to use the technical stuff.
All right, good. So let's talk a little bit about remote and then what is there today. So as I said, I sent a message to the owners of remote. I said, listen, I can do a better job. I said that very confidently, not knowing what was ahead of me. So what we were faced with was a very interesting, and it is a very interesting challenge. Do you want to tell a little bit more about that, Marcelo?
Sure. So the current status, when we started to discuss about this opportunity and what remote.com is, of course, I have a couple of years, a bit longer than that actually, building companies, scaling companies. And we said, all right, let's look at the product and the tech stack that's already there today. And most of the website doesn't actually work. And the thing is, and it's very normal, and with all technical stacks, it is, very commonly, it is Python-based, MongoDB and such. And like all technical stacks, they grow in life with problems, right? They scale, they rot, they go through many different people that change the code, too many cooks that add their flavor, and then at the end of the day, you get a product that is a mix-mash of a lot of different people, inputs and outputs. And we looked at it and said, we talked at length, talked with the owners, talked with some technical people who were still there, and I asked to review it, and it was, they did quite some good job maintaining.
Let's be specific. What is there today? Like, what is the stack?
All right. So today is Python, Flask, MongoDB, MySQL.
Front end.
They have Angular one
yeah.
something. And to be honest, the first time I tried to boot the project, it just didn't run. I asked the guys, I tried to install the dependencies. They're like at least 2 years outdated. And they said, yeah, don't try it. Just launch a Docker container that we have specifically for this, and then just try it. Yeah. And of course we did, and I tried it, and all of a sudden, I had spent one evening trying to get the project up and running. And by our experience, we would do projects in 2 days, right? So when you spend 1 day trying to get something to run, it's a really bad code smell.
So we have this very old application. I have all sorts of ideas about what we should do product-wise, and I want to get into that later. But like, where are we moving towards? What are we going to do? What are we doing with the old app, technically wise, and like, what is the new stuff that's coming?
Right. So we're very excited about this. I used to be, I've developed in a lot of different programming languages. I started with C++ and Java, a bit of Swift as well, a couple of projects, Objective-C also. Ruby on Rails, quite heavily. Lately, I worked a bit in Python as well. And several years ago, I fell in love with Elixir. And that's what's coming, right? We're going to rebuild the entire application and platform with Phoenix and Elixir, making it super fast, making it highly concurrent and parallelizable, with a very typical and robust Postgres database, and probably with some Cassandra for messaging.
So why would you choose Elixir, and why not something, I don't know, like Ruby on Rails?
So it's about speed. There's something that if you guys, anyone worked with Ruby on Rails already, knows what it is? Cool.
What about Elixir? How many of you work with Elixir? Yeah, it's pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super happy.
Yeah.
Cool. If you guys are looking for a job, let's talk in some months.
Yeah. Meet us after.
So one of the good things that I loved in Ruby was how natural it feels, how fast you can build something, right? How amazing the community is. If you need something, there's a gem for that, right? If you need help, there's always someone that can help. There's an amazing community, quite mature, super helpful. It's amazing. But one of the things that I found with the years is that scaling a Ruby on Rails app was cumbersome. Right? We working at Faber Ventures, we were helping companies to build their own apps, And one of the things that we saw is that the moment you start to get hundreds of users, you have to really know what you're doing. Otherwise, your Rails app will start to cry. You have to put some effort, considerable effort into it. And so all of a sudden, Elixir comes into play, powered by José Valim, and Phoenix, which is sort of a Ruby on Rails for Elixir, that has the same syntax sugar, super easy to write code in, it's functional rather than objective programming, super fast, and then you get all the perks on performance, on a super sturdy app, and something that is based on decades of experience, that is the airline community. And you get an app for free that is super performant, and all of a sudden, you have the idea and the concept. If an app dies, it will resuscitate itself, and it will be up as much as it can by itself, right? And so there's this huge power behind a language, and performance, and an ability to scale that Ruby didn't have. And with all the syntax sugar and the abilities to build something really fast that you can really be proud of with super performant language. And to be honest, this is something that it is paramount that there's no longer a need to be tied to old programming languages, to things that don't scale, and to also communities that are not welcoming.
What are you talking about? You're referring to something.
I'm giving small hints that in life and your professional life or even in university, you will go through different challenges and companies that will make you or force you to use certain kinds of technologies that they are probably not the best tool for the job for several reasons, not only for performance, but also for your own enjoyment, and it's something that you need to feel happy about at the end of the day. And so there are tools to do that. There are tools that you will feel better working with, and to me and to a lot of my colleagues, Elixir is pretty much one of those.
That's great. That's great. So we have an old app. We have a new app. What else? We need great people. How do you think about building a technical team, and like how do you go about that? What do you think about, and how do you set processes in place so that we can move fast?
So there are certain things that you should focus on, right? I mean, making sure that all the things you do move the needle at the end of the day is one of them, if not the most important thing. And people on the team, when you hire, when you grow the group of people you work with, it is important that they don't need to be a copy of yourself. There's always a bias towards working with people that are very similar to you in one way or another. But what is essential is that the pieces connect well. And one of the things we want to build in remote.com, of course, we're fully remote. Each of us works from their home or whatever they feel like. And what is important is that we share the challenge. We share the passion for what we do. We're very much in line in our desire to get better, to learn more, and to do things together that are amazing. And sometimes doing things that are amazing, it's not about, of course, finding the cure for cancer. That's also pretty fucking dope. But
we're not trying that. We're not trying that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But it is to feel pride in what you do. It is to find better ways to improve yourself. And also, at the end of the day, be a part of the community. One of the things that I just mentioned is that one of the things that I love about Elixir and Ruby on Rails and Ruby on Rails is the community behind it. So we are a part of that community. We are people, Job here with a lot of his blog posts around product. I've done my share on Elixir and team management as well, is that, giving back. Because most of the things you do when you're learning is taking. You're learning because someone wanted to give. When you read a blog post, a technical blog post on how to build your app in 5 minutes, it's because someone took hours, if not days, to write it, right? And there's this virtuous loop and synergy that is giving back. And we're also very much about it. We're also about learning and teaching.
I think this is a good segue to talk a little bit about what we're planning to do with remote and how we're thinking about running the company. So this is where you ask me questions, Marcella, but I will start off and tell a little bit. So, we are now running as remote as a new company. So we hired a new team, a team of 1 today, besides us 2, which is Eduardo, who sits here in the front. But that's going to grow over time, of course. And one of the first things that I did, I think is actually the first thing I did, is I created the handbook. So a way to run our organization. And it's accessible to everyone. It's fully open source. It has an MIT license, so you can fork it, do whatever you want with it. And it's on handbook.remote.com. And this is exactly the spirit, in that we are creating something we believe can be useful. And what is there? It's the way we run our company. And today it's very little, because we are a very small company. We haven't done very much yet. But it is a start of, okay, this is where we're going to write down how we do things and how we think about things and how we deal with people. This is, of course, inspired by the same thing that we did at GitLab, where we had a handbook. And many of the same things are there. Like, you shouldn't be an asshole. That's pretty important. But also things like, vacation policy. We have unlimited vacation days, because why would we even keep track of those kind of things? Someone should take sufficient rest, right? It doesn't matter whether that's more or less. So this is one of the most important things that I want to do now, transforming remote into a more successful company, is by being very transparent and very open, and about creating content that serves us, but also can be used by the rest of the world, and seeing okay, this is how you run a company like this.
What do you value in openness?
What do I value in openness? So the easiest reason to be very open or transparent, I think is the right word, is that it removes all necessity to give people permission to things. So I'm sure you've been in this situation where there's a document that you want to share with someone, and the reply is, oh, I don't have access. Can you give me access, please? And then you give them view access, and then they say, oh, I want to comment on it. Can you give me comment access? Oh, can I just fix your typos? Can you give me edit access? And I've heard this at hundreds of companies, that whatever people are doing, everything is preceded by hours of trying to give the right people the right permissions. And the bigger the organization gets, the harder this becomes, because now there's groups of people and you want to have policies in place. If your default is open, you never have to deal with this. And it sounds really silly, but that's really true. It saves a lot of time. And once everyone can access the same information, you suddenly set everyone on a level playing field, right? Everyone can now have the same information, therefore make same decision, or at least use that information to drive their own decisions. So your discussions and your meetings can be significantly shorter. I hate meetings. This is very bad for the role I have, but I hate meetings, because ordinary meetings for most people is you come together in an office, and again, this is like commuting. You spend 10 minutes getting into the little meeting room, you do small talk, and then you have to make sure we're on level playing field. So you're starting first by sharing information with everybody and saying, okay, this is what you're talking about, and this is the current status, and yada, yada, yada. This is not necessary when information is open. So, and I can talk for hours about how to run a good meeting, but to start off, making sure that everyone has access to all the information necessary, that is a huge difference, and it makes your life much easier. Now, second reason why being open is so important is that it inspires creating a community and inspires people to contribute, right? I think that I have good ideas, but they're only this good. And when other people contribute to it, we can make those ideas really great, and we can make very interesting things. I can never do that by myself. So if I don't share what I'm doing, and if I'm not open about what I'm doing, I don't give other people an opportunity to give feedback and to contribute and to participate. For this very reason, the first thing I did was open the handbook. The second thing I did was make it open source and adding a license so that you can actually contribute to it easily, and having a link to the repository. Because I might have great ideas, but I have a limited amount of time as well. Now I'm telling you, all of you, to go to handbook.remote.com and check it out and see if you want to add something, because it can make our company greater and you can learn from it as well. So I think those are the main two reasons. Just making it easy to access things and making it easy to share and contribute and improve whatever you're working on.
So from a technical standpoint, there is a clear, as I described, there's a clear point of things we would like to be part of in terms of community, technical community with the tools that we use, sharing the things we do and such. But there's a whole product and business side to remote.com.
Yeah.
So there's also a huge community there.
Yeah.
And how do you feel we can do best, and what can we bring to the table that was not there already?
Yeah, I think this is incredible, interesting challenge. So if you are building a product, one of the most important things is feedback to the product, and especially as early and as often as possible. You should constantly look for feedback. So if you, this is a funny thing. How many of you has had an idea for a good app or an interesting startup? Never? Come on. Did you share that with your friends immediately, or did you keep it secret and not tell anyone, thinking I have such a great idea and I shouldn't share it? Because this is what happens most of the time. People think to themselves, oh, it's going to be like Uber, but for bagels. and they'll sit on the idea, and they'll think to themselves, this is the best idea. One day, I'm going to do this. There's not going to be anyone else that knows about this. And it might be a good idea. Uber for bagels exists. It's called Uber Eats. Terrible idea. You could have known that if you discussed it with one of your friends. Ideas are not worth anything when it comes to like startups and projects. It's all about execution. And how do you get to that? That is to make something and listen to the feedback and change your product based on that. That is the most important thing you can do. So for remote.com, so the current state, we haven't touched it yet. It's not good, because the people that built it before us, they did not listen to feedback. They had an idea, they implemented it, and they went to the next idea. This is a very poor way to build products. And if you are going to build your, Uber for bagels like this, it's not going to be good. But if you build one version, and then you listen very closely to the one person in Braga that's going to order it, which is my wife, who loves bagels and struggles to find them, she's going to tell you, I would also like to have bagels with toppings. And then you can change your app, and you can change your ideas, and you can iterate based on that. And that's how you build good products, because the initial idea might have some part of value, but you can only extract it based on feedback. So with remote, this is exactly the problem. They built, they had a great idea, and the ideas there are very interesting. And you can see that. You see that there's like a core of a good idea there. And then they went to another idea, because they didn't listen to feedback. Now they looked only at the numbers, which is not a very good indicator of feedback. Feedback is hearing what someone has to say about your product, right? If you make an app, and there's 100 people that download it, and then after a month there's only 10 people still using it of those 100, that doesn't say anything. Maybe your app was only interesting for those 10 people. Maybe it was interesting for 100 of those people, but if you just changed one little thing, it would have been different. The only way you can discover these kind of things is by listening. So what we're doing with remote, and this is not live yet, but we'll have community.remote.com. And it's just a forum. It's exactly that. It's a place where people can give us feedback. And the most important thing about feedback is that you have to have some sort of conversation, right? Because the first feedback that people are going to give to you about your app, and that happened with remote when I look in like public forums, is people say, it's bad. It's bad. And that's all they say. Okay, why do you think it's bad? Well, I tried it and it didn't work. Okay, why? Well, I tried to sign in and I got an error message. Now we are at something. Now we know that there's something wrong with the sign-up process. And that was maybe the only thing, and we can easily fix that. So the first thing we're doing is we're creating community of the remote. It's just a forum where people can discuss. And they can discuss amongst each other, and they can discuss with us, and we'll be aware, and we'll be replying there. And then what we'll do is we'll listen to the feedback, we'll respond to it, and then we do the magic, which is actually make changes to the product and show to people, listen, you gave us this feedback, sign up is broken, and here is how we are fixing this. And that is the virtuous cycle that you want to get to. Like the idea of iterating based on feedback on your product and doing it in little steps, sometimes in big steps, but usually in little steps. That's the way to get to a good product. And like very little companies are doing that today. Like we did it at GitLab, and it works really well because it's now worth $1 billion. That's what we're going to do at Remote as well.
So the other side of the community side is, of the community discussion is, what role will remote.com play in people's lives, right? There's, I mean, a lot of people that never work remote. There's a lot of people that want to work remote, and there's some people that never even heard about the possibility of working remote. And there's a lot of people today that are working remotely, and they struggle with things. They try to reach out to other colleagues, experiences, feedback, and so on and so forth. But as we know, it's a bit scattered here and there. What do you think is going to be our play at it? What do you think is going to be our responsibility in this market, in this new product?
Yeah, I think, so our goal is help the world work remotely, right? Get more people to have the ability to work remote. And it's not to say that, I know that like not everyone wants to work from home. Like that's not the goal. I don't believe in that future either. Like some people prefer to not work at home. Some people prefer to work in an office with their colleagues and not necessarily in a co-working space, which other people might like. But the goal is that you have the option to work remotely. So I think the first and most obvious thing is working what we have there today, which is, you know, a good place to find companies that have jobs that allow you to work remotely. One thing that we're planning to do is make it easy to see what are good companies. Like today you have like things like Glassdoor. Now, don't want to burst your bubble, but Glassdoor is not great. Like you know, it's like Yelp. If you pay for it, you're gonna look better as a company. And I want to get away from that. I want to give you an overview, and this is what we're working on today, give you an overview of what are great companies to work for, where you can work remotely, and in what capacity, and how is this company managed, and how is this company ran. Because that way you can make that decision. Because I don't think you have to know upfront how to work remote if you never did it before. I think it is to be the company teaching you, and like they will have their own way. So you should be able to find a great company, apply to a position, easily find those, and then they will help you work remotely. Now, if you're working already in a company that is starting to work remotely or is struggling with it, there's a few things we're going to do. First off, you know, we're going to publish a lot of content about this. We will have a site with resources about it. And one thing that we're exploring to do, and Marcel is more than aware of this, is actually helping people and helping companies. You know, I have companies that reach out to me, and this is something we now haven't made public yet, but we will be making public, where companies come to us and say, help us work remotely. And we coach them, and we train them, and we show them how you should work properly.
And what in the long run, how do you think work will evolve throughout? I mean, right now, there's a small percentage of companies that allow people to work remotely. And there's an even smaller percentage of companies that actually embrace remote as remote first, or full embrace the culture of people that work remote. How do you think this will play out in the next couple of years, 5 years tops?
Yeah, I don't understand how we find it acceptable that the jobs that we do nowadays have to be done from an office. I don't understand it, how that's a reasonable thing. When your entire job happens on a computer, or like I can do my entire job from my iPad nowadays. Why would I ever need to go to an office to sit next to people doing the same things? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't understand like why we accept that, right? So I think the future is going to be, well, this is what I think will happen. Talented people like yourselves, you are going to look for companies that treat you best. And you have the option to choose those companies because you are in high demand. There are less people that are able to do technical jobs, that have a background in computer science or can program, then there's a need for them, right? So the demand for you is very high. So you have the option to choose a great company. And you're going to choose a company that treats you well. And what is better? A company that allows you to now and then work remote if you want to, or one that doesn't? I think the choice there is very obvious. So I think what's going to happen is that as we move forward and more people are going to make this choice to work for companies that allow them to work remotely, other companies will be forced to go along, or they will not be able to attract talent. And that is the most valuable asset modern companies have, is great people. So if great people are all walking away to other companies, in the end, these companies will be forced to accept a work style that is either remote only, or like allows you to work remote partially or whenever you want, or in what other way. But I do think that we're going to a place where the majority of companies, for the majority of jobs, you are able to work remotely at least part of the time.
Cool. And so most of the people here actually still finishing up their degrees, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something at play. I mean, universities still tend to train people to think about, yeah, you're gonna finish your degree, pick a nice office and good company that will treat you decently, pay you a nice salary, and eventually in 200 years you're gonna be able to afford a Porsche, right? And so, but what do you think it is? It's like for most of the people here, has anyone here ever actually worked for a company? So what do you think these people that will be in the looking for a job in a couple of years or a year, months, what do you think should be their first, what should be the first two things that come to play in their heads when they're looking for a job?
Yeah, wherever you go, when you choose a job, you should choose something where you can grow, right? Like that's the most important thing. If it's your first job, like you will need more money later in your life. Choose something where you know you're gonna grow. And the moment you are in a job where you don't grow, leave and go somewhere else. Again, you are in higher demand than the companies have, you will always find a job if you are in tech. Always, right? You do your job well, you study hard, you will always find a job. So the most important thing, and I think it's the only thing I'm gonna mention, is like find a place where you can grow and F everything else. Because it doesn't really matter. Like the only thing you want to do is you want to set yourself up for success, and that is looking for a place where you can grow. And those places are usually the places that are a little bit more ahead of the competition, right? If you look at the startup, it's usually a pretty good place to start, especially if that startup has some funding or has been in an accelerator. Those are places that grow very fast, and a place that grows is very interesting because you have to solve a lot of interesting problems. If you join like a large consultancy, that's great, but you have to realize that it's not going to look great if you're going to go from there to another company, and you're not going to grow very fast inside of that company. So it's totally a valid career path, but it is the slower, and also they're not very, their circumstances are not particularly nice, yeah, you probably can't work remotely. And also they don't pay very well. So I would advise every single person to think about like, where will I grow most? And it's like choosing where you would put your money to invest. I was actually read an article about this the other day. Like think like an investor. What company would I invest in? That is the company you should work for, not for any other company. And what would you invest in? You would invest in something that is likely to grow a lot.
So one of the things I'm actually curious. So who's gonna be looking for a job in 1 to 2 years? Good. Who is already looking for a job?
Very good.
So whenever you think about getting a job, how many of you think I can pretty much work or choose whatever I want to work? So for all of those that are looking for a job or will be looking for a job soon, how many of you think or actually know that they can actually choose a really, not a decent, but a really nice place to work at?
Well, all of you should raise your hand.
So that's a thing, right? It is. I remember when I mean, few weeks, months ago, while I was still in Babel, we were really growing quite fast. I mean, we're hiring like speed of craziness. We had a lot of people applying to the company, and we were hiring as much as possible given our needs and such. And the one thing that always made me a bit crazy is when someone would come in for a meeting or final step of the process, or just a quick touch base about, some people had questions such about the job they were applying for. And people were not passionate about what they were going to do. You're going to spend at least 8 hours of your day. Typically, you're up for what 12, 14 hours, maybe 16. And you're going to spend 8 hours in a place that you don't like. You know nothing about it. With people that smell, make noises. Maybe working with technology that you really don't really like. Right? And it's appalling and crazy. It looks like a Black Mirror episode, right? You're going to a place to do something with people you don't like, to do something you don't enjoy. You're going to get paid. When, with just like either 10 minutes searching, 30 minutes writing something, applying to somewhere, you could be getting almost twice as much, or the same amount, and getting a hell of a ride, learning from people that you really value, getting experience that you think you should be getting at that point. And in a place, and working in an environment, either an office or from a place that you really want to work from. Some colleagues of mine, they are amazing, and they were super highly productive working from home. Others weren't, but they were crazy productive working from a coffee shop downtown. And that's how they felt like. And that's what you should do, right? It's not about just finding wherever a company throws 1,000 euros at you and gives you a nice suit or asks you to wear a nice suit. Because what does that translate for your life? How will that make you happy? Right? This is the one thing that I learned with, this was my 7th team, I believe, and this is the one thing that only matters. At the end of the day, people want to be happy, right? And if you're going for a job just because it's a job, in this line of work, it doesn't make sense. You can choose. You should choose, right? Otherwise, it's just a waste of time.
You know, I feel so strongly about it that it should be easy for people in tech to find a job. That if you are looking for a job, whenever it is, in the next 1 or 2 years, and within 3 months you haven't found a job, you can email me. It's my first name, job@remote.com. It's very easy. You'll email me, and I'll tell you how to find a job. Because I'm certain that everyone can find a great job like this. Because there's now, we have thousands of companies on remote.com already, and we barely got started, that allow you to work remotely, are great companies to work with. They are successful, they grow a lot, they have a lot of people that you can learn from. And these companies, they pay better than most other companies, and you're set up for a much better future. And I think maybe that's a good note to end on. I want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions. So if you do have any questions, now is the time to raise your hand.
Actually, I have one last question. Sorry.
Ask it.
Right,
while you all think about your question.
I know you're waiting. So how long do you think it will take to get a job if you're looking for it?
You can't ask open questions to an audience.
I can. You're good. Just shout a number.
A month.
A month. More.
3
More.
months.
Right. Just give you some experience, some real life examples. I had 3 friends who were recently looking for a job, tech area. One took 4 hours to get a job. The other one took 2 days, and the other one started a conversation on a Friday, and then got a proposal on next Tuesday. This is how fast it takes.
Average of 2 days? 2 days. All right, questions. There was one there first.
Yesterday I was actually in the website remote. I think it's remote.com.
Yeah.
And I was looking for jobs for fun, and I found one I thought was nice. But there's this thing where I'm just right now finishing my college degree, and I don't have any experience apart from personal projects that I scrape after 2 days of tinkering around. And I'm not very confident if I would be able to do a good job remotely, because I still think that there's a difference between talking to people through a computer than having them next to you. All right. My question was, do you think there's a required minimum experience level to be able to do a good job while working remotely? Or do you think it's okay for a student with 0 years of experience to find a job right away, a remote job right away? And do you think he would do a good job?
There's no difference. Like, why would anyone help you better when they are in person? As Marcelo says, the only difference is that you can smell them. There's no difference. You can be coached as well, or actually a little bit better, because it's easier to share your screen when you're not together, right? Like having one screen with 2 people is annoying, and actually sharing your screen is easier. There's no difference. And I can give you 2 examples, and I'll give you names. Tiago is a good friend of mine. He studied in Coimbra. While he was studying, he started to work for us at GitLab. Easily one of the best programmers I know. Marcelo knows him as well, he can confirm. And now he's working for some fancy London startup. Another example is a good friend of mine. Also worked for GitLab DAO. He was also studying exact same thing. Best programmer I've met, was incredibly successful at GitLab. What you should do is when you talk about yourself, you shouldn't say, I just does. You say, I have these projects that I built. They show my skill. You said, I have a few side projects, but you said it like it was worth nothing. Those are everything that matters. If you go into a company and you're going to write software, great companies don't give a shit about your degree. Not at all. The best programmer I know, hands down, I'm sorry, Marcel, it's not you. He studied for he never did university. He studied for 1 year to be a teacher, which he hated, and then he dropped out. And he's now working as a programmer. And when he started with me, I was his manager for a bit while I was a programmer myself. He was amazing. He's an amazing programmer. It's only about merit. And when you present yourself, talk about the things that you have done, and not about the just. You have experience. You have been programming. That's the experience that you need. It's not about whether you sat in an office or not. And there was another question here in front.
Okay.
It was basically the same thing. Can you hear me?
Now
okay.
I can.
It was basically the same thing, because I was wondering if it was easier for a person who has no experience, like your colleagues that you mentioned, to apply to a job where he can go every day, to a workplace where he can learn physically with his colleagues, or to apply to a remote job like that. So
Yeah, but a remote job, you have to be there every day as well. And you also have to learn.
And I actually can tell you something that is different. And one of the good things about working remote is that you build a discipline of, for instance, writing things down, documenting the stuff that you do, which doesn't happen in 99.9999999% of the other companies based on Office. Of course, there's good companies with really good structure and discipline and working in Office. They do well, right? But working remotely also makes you think about how to pass on knowledge. It's not like, look, imagine I'm going to work I'm going to Japan for 3 months, and my colleagues are still in Portugal, right? So we're going to be in different time zones. If I want to write something that is convoluted, bad code, but works, I'll need to write something down, right? Otherwise, the poor guy is going to wake up and say, what the fuck am I going to do with this? Like spaghetti code, you see? So it also, there's a high chance that you'll be more likely to learn something because it was well documented, there's procedure behind it, there's structure to it. There's a higher chance that you're going to have more material to learn from. I mean, from colleagues, there's no difference. There's no correlation between start working 2 years experience or not. Makes no difference.
May I make a question?
Yeah, of
also?
course. Yeah.
So we Cesium, we work most of the time remotely, but I find the hard part is managing people, like making them feel engaged with what we are doing, what we are building, because we have such great tools to write code, share codes, make pull requests, reviews, but it's really hard to make them feel like they are a part of our team, so they are also a little bit responsible for that. So I would just want to ask some advice for us.
Yeah, this is a great question. So how do you get people engaged and excited when you work remotely? This is the same thing as in real life. Like it doesn't change. Like you have to do the same things whether you're remote or not, right? I think it's important to understand that when you work remotely, it doesn't mean that you don't see people face to face, even through a camera. That's an important thing. You know, when I have a video call with people, every single person, I always turn on the camera. I never do the calls like you sometimes do in like, you know, I used to have a lot of banks as customers, and they always have these calls where everyone just dials in. It's horrible. You don't know who's there. You can't see anyone. It's very impersonal. It's important to see each other. So you have to do the same things. Just set up video calls, call with people, talk with people directly. There's a lot of value in it. There's a reason why I'm here today. Like I could just all send you an email. Would not be the same, right? So do the same things. Talk with people. Set up video calls. You know, make them excited. Like you can only make people excited by working very hard on it. And managing in general is a big skill and one that is worthwhile spending time on understanding and learning and wanting to get better at.
Hi. With all the people that you have worked with, did you find that some people are unable to adapt to remote working? Like, do you think that some people, do you think that everyone can adapt to working remotely given some time, or do you think that some people just are, because of laziness or something like that, just can't do it?
If you are lazy, you can't work for any company. Yeah. A good company will fire you if you're lazy. So yes, everyone can work remotely. I think there's challenges, and I think it's up to the company and not to the individual people, right? If you're not good at your job, you're not good at your job. It shouldn't be at that particular job. But if you're an organization and you know that someone is good at their job, but they have problems, as an organization, you can help that, right? I think by far, everything is relatively easy to solve except for one thing, which is bonding, like getting to know people and building a bond with people. I think that's by far the hardest thing to manage in remote companies. And the only way to solve that is by spending an incredible amount of time and money on that as a company. And you save all that money because you don't have office costs. You save a lot on salaries because you don't have to hire everyone from San Francisco. But that is incredibly hard. So you have to make sure you meet up with people, or that you spend a lot of time video calling, you spend a lot of explicit time on that. And that is solvable as an organization. And that will be easier to solve for some people that don't mind less interactions during the day, and harder for other people that seek to be very social all the time. But for all of those people, it's solvable. Although I'm sure, and this is what I was saying earlier, it doesn't work for everybody. Like not every organization, especially working remotely, is going to work for everybody. And some people will want to be around their colleagues every single day, have lunch with their colleagues every single day. Because you can't have that with a company that's only remote, where everybody lives all over the world. It's impossible. It's just not, there's no one there. So if you have to have lunch every single day with all your colleagues, and the people from the co-working space don't, it's not sufficient, then that is the solution to that problem. And I think that is the biggest challenge. But not just as all companies and all people have to find some compatibility.
Okay, thank you.
There's another question here.
So I want to know how the financial and the legal struggles that companies find when hiring remotely.
Yeah.
And if it is worth for them to take care of that, and how that is processed in your application.
Yeah. So it depends how you run your company. In the sense that, like, let's take a standard startup. Let's say that you're trying to be a standard startup, you get your venture capital and whatnot. What you would typically do is you would open an office in Mountain View or in San Francisco. Every single person you would hire, you would pay about $140,000 per year as a starting salary, and that's for low-level employees. Like management goes way up. That's incredibly expensive. Then you have to rent an office. It costs you $1 million at least a year. So if you hire people from everywhere in the world, you're not all going to pay them that salary. So you save immense amount of salary costs there. You won't have to get an office, or at least as big as an office, so you save a lot of money there. Now, what is the cost of working remote on top of that? There's a few things. One is, you'll probably want to get a team together now once in a while. So you have to pay for those flights and for the stay over in that. And then the most important, you already mentioned it, like how do you do payroll and how do you do legal expenses? This is not solved. This is incredibly difficult. Small companies, or if you have only a handful of people in one country, you make them all contractors. So you make them manage their own finances and invoice you as a company. You pay them a slightly higher salary because they have more risk and they have to take on more, but they all work as contractors. As a net, this saves you a lot of money as a company, even especially versus the local where you have an office in San Francisco. I can give you an estimate. I think GitLab has approximately, if 100% was the baseline for a successful startup, GitLab is at like 60% of that cost. It's incredibly efficient. You can hire way more, almost double the amount of people working remotely, and that is including the overhead of having to deal with legal and payroll issues. But those issues are super complex, and they're super expensive. So the companies that I advise nowadays, what I tell them is that solve it when you encounter the problem, which is only when you are starting to hire too many contractors in one country, which is like 5 for most countries, only then try to solve it for just that country. And then you have to hire like some company that can help you with payroll and all the legal stuff. But by then it's already worth it. By the time you can hire 6 people from one country that you pay much less than you would in San Francisco. So the answer is it's complex, but in the end it's cheaper.
Okay. I also wanted to know if remote.com, for example, do you know Upwork?
Yeah, of course.
Their platform has the payment service included in the website.
Yeah.
And I want to know if remote.com has such a service that the payments are proceeded through the website.
Yeah, so we actually have that and we're removing it because the overhead is immense for us. Because when you think about these kind of startups, you think about I do a job, and the person that asks for my job, they put money in an escrow service, and then when I complete the job, it goes to me. And that's the reality when everything goes well. But what we as a company would be dealing with would be with all the exceptions that happen about 20% of the time, which is the person is not happy, they don't want to give you the money, but you think you did the job. Now there has to be some resolution. They say they sent the money, but it didn't appear. There's a huge paper trail. The overhead of that is immense, and it's so much work. And we get a lot of people from using Upwork sending us emails saying, "Oh, this sucks. Please do something better." I think maybe eventually we'll do it, but I personally don't want to be bothered with it because it's a huge pain in the neck to deal with all that bureaucracy. So yes, we have it today, but we're removing it. Don't use it. I think there was somewhere else in your question.
Hi there, thank you for the both being here. So my question is for you, Job. What is your advice for a new developer graduate becoming a product manager, mostly to work remotely?
So can you repeat the question?
So your advice for a new developer graduate becoming a product manager.
So how to become a product manager? You know what? I get those emails. How to become a product manager? I always laugh at them because I always think they're bullshit. I think
isn't there a satanic?
Yeah, you have to. You have to offer no. So a product manager, it means different things to different companies, and it's important that you understand that. And it's important that you can start to distinguish what those different companies require from you. So whenever you look for job ads for product managers, read exactly what they say there. The easiest way to get in product management is if you are already in a company working, you start to lean into product manager. So you start to do product management job even though you are not. And then once a vacancy fills up, or this is my strategy in life, if you want something, you ask for it. You just say to your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss, you tell them, I want to be a product manager. And I can do it because here's the proof. That is the best way to do it. If you are a graduate, it's tricky right? Like it's kind of hard. I would not advise you to do any of those certifications or courses. I've never hired anyone with any of those. And when I looked into those, it was mostly bullshit. It's not about managing Scrum or doing Agile and such. You should understand those things. The most important thing is that you think about how are our products built, and what makes a good product good. Like one question I always would ask product managers is, what do you think is a good product, and what makes it good? And if you can answer that well, and if you understand products well, you get a very long way. You should just apply to product manager positions. 100% of the product managers that I work with, they always came from a different thing, like different field altogether. I had one that was a PhD in electrical engineering. I had another one that did sociology. I had another that did something completely different. They always come from different places. The most important thing that they could transmit to me is that, look, I have all these different experiences, but throughout all of this, there's a single thread, and that is I'm interested in products, and I have product thinking. And just like I told the other guy earlier, like you can show off the existing products that you have and projects that you made. You can also show how you are already thinking about product. And as a product manager, the best way to do that is like writing blog posts, being opinionated and being public about your opinions and the way you think about products. And that's very much harder to show. And admittedly, there are much less product management positions than there are engineering positions. It's a very hard job to get, but once you get it, it's very good because the demand for product managers is even higher than for engineers or designers, and they are paid much more typically as well.
And can I ask you what were the major difference and goals between being the CEO of Remote and the product manager of GitLab?
Oh, so I used to have the job at GitLab to be the boss of the product, the CEO of the product. Now I'm the CEO of everything. So everything is now my job, and it used to be just the product.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
I would like to take this time to thank you, Job and Marcelo, to being here. We loved it. I hope you love it as much as I did. So I think today we have nothing more, but come back tomorrow, please. I would like to have a round of applause to Job and Marcelo again, please.
Só uns anúncios de paróquia, muito rápido. Relembro que amanhã começam os workshops. Amanhã será toda de workshops, com um coffee break no meio. Aproveito para relembrar que os desafios estão live, portanto podem começar a participar nos desafios. E há uma novidade que é haverá um jantar na quinta-feira no Hotel Meliá e as inscrições são da mesma forma do sorteio da PlayStation 4, portanto enviam o currículo para sei+cv@cesium.ti.minho.pt. Relembro que o currículo deverá ter um mínimo de informações e se forem selecionados receberão um e-mail a convocar-vos para o jantar de quinta-feira. Okay? Estejam atentos às redes sociais que muitas novidades serão dadas por lá. Até amanhã.